Welcome in. It's Thursday, November 3rd. I'm making sure to record this bright and early, so stick with me if I sound a bit tired. But we have Week 9 coverage on tap today, so stay tuned for that as we look to somehow top the 11-4 record that we managed last week during the picks of the week. Before we start, make sure you stay to the end of the episode as we have a very special announcement. First time ever for something like this on my show, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be for next Tuesday's show, and it's something I believe you guys will love. Without further ado, welcome to the Anomaly Podcast. I am your host, Owen Stiftar. Let's dive into Thursday night. Alright, like I said last week, for Week 8 in the NFL, we somehow managed an 11-4 record overall this year. We're 24-19, so not too bad. Remember, we started late. We started with this podcast, so this would be our fourth week doing Picks of the Week. Regardless, we have the 7-0 Philadelphia Eagles heading into Houston to take on the 1-5-1 Houston Texans. I labeled this in the title and on the screen as a David versus Goliath matchup because that's what it is. We'll start with Philly and then we'll make our way to David, right? Philly, they're 7-0 on the season. They've only given up 20 plus points in a single game twice this season. And they've also only turned the ball over twice this season. So that's definitely a recipe for success in the NFL and to win games, right? Is to protect the ball and play good defense. You can't ask for much more than that. They're coming off of a dominant win against the Steelers, which is always good to see as a Browns fan. For the fourth quarter, they practically had their backups in. So a bit disrespectful, but obviously there's a strategy behind it. You want to keep your guys fresh for the long haul, right? Shout out to Gardner Minshew. He went out there and he looked okay. But if they win this game here, if they win Thursday night, which is today, they have a long time to rest. Their next game is next Monday night against the Commanders. And after that, I'm going to read you guys their schedule for the remainder of the year. So they have this game against the Texans, and then they have a long wait for the next week's Monday night against the Commanders. Following that, we have the Colts with Sam Ehlinger, the struggling Green Bay Packers, Tennessee, the Giants. We all know the struggles Chicago's had, and the Dallas Cowboys to close the 2022 part of the season. So going into 2023, I could very well see this team remaining undefeated, and I'm not going to say they have an easy schedule, but that's just how everything fell this year. You know, you can't control who's in front of you. All they can control is if they win or lose the game, right? But for this matchup, the Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown connection should continue to stay dominant. I'm expecting a very big game for Miles Sanders as Houston is terrible against the run. I'm expecting Miles Sanders to get going early and often, and maybe we don't see as many touchdowns from Jalen Hurts this week, but I could definitely see him having a lot of yards and Miles Sanders finishing off the drives. Let's move over to the home team, the Houston Texans. They're coming off of a loss to the Titans at home, or on the road, excuse me, but they're hosting the lone undefeated team in the league, like we mentioned, without their second best receiver in Nico Collins, so whatever that means. A positive for this Texans team, however, is Philly is also susceptible to the running back position. Philly has given up 7 touchdowns this season to the running back position. Every single week they've given up a touchdown to the starting running back. Good thing for the Texans, their best player, Dameon Pierce, has gotten better and better each week. And guess what? He plays the running back position. Now he should be able to have a pretty good game. Expect for him to get a lot of catches, I will say, more than probably he's had so far this season. But with the addition of Robert Quinn, the Eagles still have Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, guys like that on their D line, and then when they added Robert Quinn, it's going to be hard for this Texans team to get anything going down the field. I'm expecting a lot of short passes and a lot of running. which is what they've done this season. So, if anything, they're playing a good team, but this Texans team, their scheme's not going to have to change too much. I believe this game, weirdly enough, just because it's a Thursday night game, I believe it's going to be close throughout the first half. And I believe Houston's going to be able to manage the clock. I believe they're going to be able to run the ball. Um, but, second half, it's like college football. It could stay close for the first half. Second half, the better team's going to pull away. I believe it's going to quickly get out of hand at the start of the third quarter. And, I mean, hey, for Houston and Houston fans, Houston media, start making those Bryce Young photoshops. Start getting used to the idea that CJ Stroud or Bryce Young will be your quarterback heading into the 2023 NFL season. That's going to do it for Thursday night. Let's get into the actual NFL games on Sunday. All right, we're going to start off weird matchup here to start off with, but I wanted to talk about it. We're going to have the 4-3 Los Angeles Chargers heading into Atlanta to take on the first place Atlanta Falcons. The Chargers are going cross country practically for this matchup to take on the Falcons. They're coming off of a bye. Atlanta is also coming off of a win where they captured the division. We'll talk more so about that crazy game later they had against Carolina last week. But I believe this could be one of the most entertaining games in the early window. We're talking about the 1 o'clock games. And though I want to say Atlanta wins again and continues their momentum, continues their playoff push, give me the Chargers with Keenan Allen hopefully being back. I know there was reports saying that he's not. There's not a good chance he suits up for this week, right? And they're already down Mike Williams. This is really going to be a Josh Palmer, Austin Eckler week for the Chargers offensively. And Gerald Everett, obviously, which is good for one of my fantasy teams. But that's not here nor there. Give me the Chargers on the road, though they're down some key pieces. Next up, we're going to have Miami at Chicago. For Miami, we'll start with them. They're coming off of an impressive win last week, winning 2 straight. Obviously, ever since 2 has been back. Last week, obviously, Waddle exploded. He had 3 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill we're talking about, he obviously did all the dirty work. He would get the deep catches, and he would get them into the 30 to 20-yard range for the Miami offense, and then Jaylen Waddle would find the end zone. So that dynamic duo there is obviously incredibly hard for defenses to prepare for. But before the 2021 NFL draft, I want to backtrack here. Before the 2021 NFL draft, Miami had a top pick, and they made a trade with the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, San Fran traded a ton to move up from the back half of the draft to number 3. That's where they took Trey Lance. But in that trade, San Fran traded 3 first-round picks to Miami for the number 3 pick. Miami has turned those picks, through trades or just drafting. They've turned those picks into Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, and now Bradley Chubb. Obviously, the Miami Dolphins just traded for Bradley Chubb from the Denver Broncos. They sent Chase Edmonds over to Denver as well, which Chase Edmonds, we'll talk about that in a second, but it's a very weird free agency signing, and it was a very weird time. It was just a very weird stretch, his time with the Dolphins. But they also brought in Jeff Wilson for a 5th-round pick, I believe. But for that 2021 NFL draft, I mean, that's the definition of capitalizing on draft capital. You're trading a number 3 pick, and you end up getting arguably the best wide receiver duo in the NFL in Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. And then you get a very underrated pass rusher in Bradley Chubb. Obviously, right before I actually turned on the mic here for this podcast, he just got an extension, so congratulations to Bradley Chubb and his family. I'll say it for every athlete, man. That's generational money if managed right. So congrats to him and his. But before we get to Chicago, I wanted to touch on Chase Edmonds. If you guys remember, 5 minutes into free agency this past offseason, when it opened, Chase Edmonds was the first person signed. So it was safe to say he was high on Miami's target list. He was a priority for them this offseason. And like I said, within 5 to 10 minutes of the free agency being open, Chase Edmonds was signed, and to a pretty big deal for a running back. So it's very weird that 8 games in, they just decided to move off of him. I get it. His numbers probably weren't there. Maybe there's something behind the scenes that hasn't come out yet. But it's very weird that they made him a priority this offseason and just got away from him 8 games in. Regardless, we'll talk about the home team now. The 3-5 Chicago Bears. Obviously, they just traded for Chase Claypool. They traded a second round pick for him, which I don't know yet. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of it. I mean, if anything, it will help your quarterback, and at the end of the day, that's all you need to do as a franchise, right? But Justin Field, he's shown improvement the last 2 weeks. But a big problem with Justin Fields, he holds onto the ball way too long. As a Browns fan, I know this, but Justin Fields he takes way too many sacks. And Chicago's defense as a whole, they struggled last week from start to finish against the run. We expected that, and we predicted that, but that cannot happen again this week. With with trading Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn in the last week or so, well, not to mention they traded Roquan Smith for a bag of chips. Okay, we'll say that, but they just traded away Roquan Smith, which is the NFL's leading tackler, and Robert Quinn, who's a very underrated pass rusher. If they, they, I could very well see that this game is just like last week, where it gets ugly very quickly, and they're not going to be able to stop the run. And for a Miami offense that's as explosive as they are, if you can't stop the run against Miami, I mean, you make their offense practically unstoppable with how much speed they have. And the weak part of their offense is probably the running back position. And if you can't stop that, you're setting yourself up for a long day. Give me Miami on the road to take down the Bears. Next up, we're gonna have Carolina at 2-6. Um, Obviously, going into last week, if they won the game, they were first. If they lost the week, they were last place, and that's currently where they sit. They're going into Cincy to take on the 4-4 Cincinnati Bengals, which they are coming off of a short week. We're talking about Cincy in a game that nobody saw coming. I predicted the Browns to win, but did I think they were going to? No. I didn't think that the Jamar Chase loss was going to hurt them as much as it did. But though in Joe Burrow's last 2 home games, he's averaged 380 yards passing and 5 touchdowns a game in his last 2 home games. I still still think that without Jamar Chase, it's hurting them more than we think as fans, and it's going to continue to show in this game. Now, Carolina had a chance at first place last week, which I mentioned, but they lost in heartbreaking fashion. That Hail Mary at the end will go down as the throw of the year. I mean, incredible throw from PJ Walker. I cannot believe that the kicker missed that extra point, but that's not here nor there. It's just heartbreaking for Carolina fans. I'm expecting Carolina in this game to keep it close throughout the first half, but, you know, there's only so much Deontay Foreman can do on the ground. I expect Cincy to get everything back together, prepare a full week without Jamar Chase, and win this game pretty easily. Next up, we're gonna have a division matchup in the NFC North. Green Bay at 3-5 is heading into Detroit to take on the 1-6 Detroit Lions. Green Bay, these are perhaps the two teams that are the most desperate for a win this season in this week. Both teams, on the same hand, they both have terrible run defenses. Green Bay is 29th right now, and Detroit is 30th. Green Bay is coming off of a loss to the Bills last week, which we can't fault them too much. It is the Bills. It's a lot of people's Super Bowl favorites, but that makes it 4 straight losses for an Aaron Rodgers-led Packers team. And I will say that though they lost, their defense did look like a completely different defense. It looked like last year's, like the normal Packers defense that we're used to seeing. in that second half. So, I mean, that's the only positive I could pull out from last week is that their defense looked better in the second half. For Detroit, obviously they just traded away TJ Hawkinson for 4 total draft picks coming up. And we'll talk about that later more so when we get to the Minnesota Vikings, which is very weird in itself being an in-division trade. But I would say it's a good trade for both teams. And I will say that Detroit, they need the they need the picks a lot, right? But more so talking about this matchup, they're coming off of a tough loss last week, and coming into the year, people saw this team as a sneaky playoff team. I wouldn't have put them there yet, but I saw it. I saw the vision, and I was able to see, hey, with Amon Ra and with DeAndre Swift, this offense has a chance to maybe sneak in, right? But unfortunately, the writing is now on the wall for this team, and though they have plenty of time to turn it around, it's most likely Dan Campbell's last season with the team. And I mean, like I said, their offense, when it's at full strength, has been good. I mean, they average pretty much 30 points a game when everyone's healthy. But the defense is just as bad as how good the offense is, if that makes any sense. The offense can put up 30 points a game, but the defense, no matter who's healthy or who isn't, they give up 30 points a game. So that's not a recipe for success in the NFL. Give me Green Bay on the road, even though they're struggling, coming off of 4 straight losses. Detroit is somehow in a worse position than them. Give me Green Bay on the road. Next up, we're gonna have Indy at 3-4-1, going into Foxborough to take on the 4-4 last place New England Patriots. Indy, will start with them. The Colts are one of this year, one of this year's more surprising disasters or disappointments, right? As a team, um, they're on the road here. Like I said in Foxborough, where this season the Colts on the road, they only average 10 points a game. And they're still Sam Ellinger. Obviously, he took over last week. They're still in the middle of a QB change. He still has to adjust to being the full-time starter, and to go up against Bill Belichick and this Patriots defense. I can't imagine that it will go smoothly for him. But hopefully for my fantasy team, selfishly I'm talking here, JT picks it back up and he's able to uh, get back to where we would see JT last year. I remember last year when he took over in the second half of the year. I'm hoping he can replicate that this season. For New England, they're at home with a resettled quarterback position. Unlike Indy, Mac Jones is now going to be the full-time starter yet again. They're playing a Colts team that struggles on the road, and both backs, Damian Harris has another week to recover. They both should get going early and often, and with their defense playing the way it is, I expect this game to be over quickly. There's a lot of games this week I feel that way, and this is one of them. Give me New England at home and with an elite running attack. Next up, we're gonna have Buffalo at 6-1, heading into New York to take on the second place in the AFC East, New York Jets at 5-3. We'll start with Buffalo. They're heavy road favorites. I believe the spread was like 13. It's insane for um, to be on the road playing a 5-3 team. But regardless, Josh Allen has won his last 4 starts against the Jets. Throughout his career, he's 5-2 against the Jets. So still, he has a pretty good record, regardless if they're home or not. And they've looked amazing on both sides of the ball. Like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of people's Super Bowl favorites. And if you're unaware, they just traded for Nyheim Hines. Obviously, he was the backup running back for a long time in Indianapolis. They just traded for him. They also traded away Zach Moss, which I didn't talk about for the Colts side of things. I don't expect Zach Moss to have much of an impact wherever he goes in any team. I hate to be disrespectful, but some backs just aren't cut for success in the NFL, right? But the Bills, they just picked up Nyheim Hines. It's interesting to see if he will actually get playing time this week. He is a veteran, and they seem to pick up on playbooks a lot quicker than younger stars, right? But overall, I believe when we look back at this trade deadline at come playoff time or even after the season, we're going to say this was an underrated pickup. We'll start with the home team now. The New York Jets, they have a problem on their hands, and that problem is Zach Wilson. A couple weeks ago, I sat here for a couple minutes and I praised Zach Wilson for the promise that he was showing and how he was gradually getting better and better each and every week. But I, it's safe to say he's one of the most confusing NFL quarterbacks that we have. When he came back, like I said, he showed promise and his accuracy and decision making, which has always been his biggest flaw. It was better. It looked better. But the last 2 weeks, if you just watch him throw, even last week with just watch his interceptions, his three of them that he had against New England, and then watch his throw to Garrett Wilson. That was probably his biggest play of the day. All of those throws, it looked like he was just playing backyard football. I mean, if you watch him, it's like he's blindfolded and he's just like, F it, my guy's down there somewhere, and he's just flinging the ball. It's like the definition of a gunslinger. And I don't know. He's got a problem on his hands. I understand he's young, but at some point you got to start showing some flashes and being consistent with those flashes. James Robinson, last week, he obviously made his debut. He was on a snap count, but hey, I believe he's going to be more involved this week. There's no more snap count for James Robinson in this Jets offense. And with how Michael Carter played last week, I expect James Robinson to play well this week and maybe even take over the starting job in New York. However, for this game, even though they're home and the Bills are due for a loss, I don't see it coming. And I believe the Jets would need everything to go their way. Give me Buffalo on the road. They improved to 7-1. Next up, we're gonna have Minnesota at 6-1. They're heading into Washington to take on the 4-4 surprising Washington Commanders. Minnesota, like I mentioned earlier, they just traded for T.J. Hawkinson. They gave up 4 picks, and they really haven't had a reliable tight end since the prime days of Kyle Rudolph, which was 2016-ish, 2017-ish. So it's been 5 or 6 years since they've had a consistent and reliable tight end. Nonetheless, it's rare to see in division trades. That's the biggest thing that caught me off guard when I got the notification. The big thing with this Minnesota team, actually, we'll get back to that. Right now, they hold a commanding lead in the NFC North. As we know, Dalvin Cook is warming up. He's getting better and better each week after his early season injuries. And their defense has looked amazing in the last 3 weeks. They're top 5 defense in that stretch. And with the pickup of T.J. Hawkinson, this was the point I wanted to make earlier. With T.J. Hawkinson now in the offense, and with watching this team the last couple weeks, it seems like Justin Jefferson doesn't have to do literally everything for this offense anymore. And I don't want to put it into the air. I do not trust Kirk Cousins when it comes to playoff time. I'm just gonna put it out there. But this team has the tools to be a Super Bowl contender. With Justin Jefferson, with Adam Thielen, with KJ Osborne, who's very slept on, uh, with Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, now T.J. Hawkinson. I mean, don't forget Irv Smith when he's healthy. He's a heck of an athlete. I mean, I think he runs a 4.3 or 4.4 as a tight end. So he's an athlete, and if he's getting secondary linebackers or secondary DBs, this Hawkinson trade might even help Irv Smith. Not even to mention, they have the NFL sack leader in Zadarius Smith on the other side of the ball. They have Patrick Peterson. They have Harrison Smith. I mean, this team is built for a long run. Uh, Eric Kendricks. I don't know how I went this long without naming possibly their best defensive player, and Daniel Hunter. So I mean, like they have talent and a lot of it on both sides of the ball. Don't be surprised if in a couple weeks we're looking at this Minnesota team in a completely new light. They're 6-1. But for the home team, the 4-4 Washington Commanders, they have shown fight with Taylor Heineke taking control of the offense and him just being under center. He's probably going to be the starter for the remainder of the season, regardless of if Wentz comes back and he's healthy. They're probably just going to roll with Heineke for the remainder of the season. And hey, I mean, since Heineke's took over, they've won 2 out of the last 3 games, and 2 of those games have been on the road. So the Commanders have been impressive. Unfortunately, they're just outmatched in this game. Give me Minnesota on the road. They're also going to 7-1. Next up, we're not going to spend too much time on this matchup, but the 2-5 Raiders heading to Jacksonville to take on the 2-6 Jacksonville Jaguars. Like I said, we're not going to spend too much time on it. It's a matchup of two-win teams. Las Vegas is looking to bounce back after being shut out last week against the Saints and Alvin Kamara's big day. Jacksonville, they're also looking to bounce back from their loss in London to Mr. Jumping Jacks and Mr. High Knees Russell Wilson. Good news for Jacksonville, though, they did just trade for Calvin Ridley, who, let's not forget, Calvin Ridley's top 15, top 20 receiver in the NFL, but he's suspended. So the acquisition means nothing for the remainder of this season. So overall, when you look at this game, it's a coin flip going into it. Give me Jacksonville late on some type of a touchdown or field goal. We're moving on to the 4 o'clock games where we have the 5-3 Seattle Seahawks at the 3-5 Arizona Cardinals. Are they in the State Farm Arena now or stadium? I cannot remember. I think they're in the State Farm Arena. Regardless, for Seattle on the road, these teams met back in Week 6 just a couple weeks ago. Seattle won 19-9, 19-9, and overall this season they are 2-2 on the road. So hey, uh, obviously the biggest point we have to put out there for Seattle is that the emergence of Ken Walker has been amazing. He's scored a touchdown in 4 straight games. He's continuing to be a difference maker in this offense, and he's helped them to some wins. For Arizona, they're in desperation mode. They sit 2 games under 500. Like I said, they're 3-5. D Hop has been D Hop came back and he's looked amazing in both games. I think he's averaging like 14 targets a game. So they are force feeding him the ball to say the least. Rondale Moore has also looked great in this offense, and I haven't went against the Cardinals yet. Maybe it's my love for Kyler Murray. If you guys don't know, I love Kyler Murray as a quarterback. I'm in the minority there. I understand that. But give me Arizona at home. I believe since they are in desperation mode, they need to win way more than Seattle does. I think they can pull it together and bounce back with a win here at home against the Seattle Seahawks. Next, 4 o'clock game, we're going to have the Rams at 3-4 going into Tampa to take on the 3-5 struggling Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is the most difficult game of the week, I would say, to pick, with both teams having lost 3 of their last 4 games. The loser will fall even further down the standings in the NFC. It's going to make their road from this point on harder to make the playoffs. We'll start with the Rams, though, as we always do with the road teams. For the Rams, Cooper Kupp, last time that we saw him, he was dealing with an ankle injury. I mean, he's still slated to play this week. We know how tough Cooper Kupp can be. It will be interesting to see if he does play, how bad that ankle is affecting him. And it'll also be interesting to see if Matt Stafford trusts the other weapons in that offense enough. I mean, Van Jefferson's back. Happy to see him back because he went to Florida. But nonetheless, it's interesting to see if Cooper Kupp's hurt. Does Stafford trust Allen Robinson? Does he trust Darrell Henderson even? Does he trust, I just said his name, Van Jefferson? So it'll be interesting to see how this offense will operate if Cooper Kupp is on a snap count. For Tampa, um, they need revenge. This is the rematch of the divisional round last season, where obviously we all thought it was Tom Brady's last game. It wasn't. I mean, he ended up coming back, but Tom Brady and his team, they're in a slump. For some odd reason, I have no confidence in this answer whatsoever. But give me Tampa at home, and in a sense, it's going to be revenge against the Los Angeles Rams. If you're unsure, always take the home team, right? But as we move over to the Sunday night game, I believe this has the potential to be the game of the week. We'll start with the 5-2 Tennessee Titans. They They had a bit of a quarterback issue last week. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill missed because he had the flu, but he should have enough time to return for this game. Obviously, like I said, Malik stepped in last week, and he looked like Ryan Tannehill. He looked pretty good snapping the ball and handing the ball off to Derrick Henry. He looked pretty good doing that. So, for this matchup, however, whoever the quarterback is, I believe it'll be Tannehill. I believe the Titans would just need more than they're going to need more than just handing the ball off to Derrick Henry in this matchup. KC's defense, it's the best defense in the Mahomes era, and just giving the ball to Derrick Henry for 30 times doesn't set them up for it doesn't set them up for success, right? But like I mentioned, the home team is the Chiefs. They're 5-2 as well. We know Kansas City is tough at home. Arrowhead is widely known as one of the hardest places to play due to the noise and all that. But hey, overall, Mahomes is 1-2 against the Titans in his career. That obviously includes the AFC Championship game that Mahomes won in 2020, which they went on to win the Super Bowl. But that's his only win against the Titans. The other two games came in the regular season, and Tennessee came out on top, obviously both times. But for the offense of Kansas City, it's just too much. They're coming off of a bye, so they have more rest. and one thing I want to see from this week, I have Kansas City winning, by the way. I want to see Kadarius Toney out there. I know Andy Reid said that he wants to make sure he's comfortable before he puts him out there. But as a Florida fan and then just as an NFL fan, I mean, I know the talent that Kadarius Toney has, and I cannot wait to see him with the best quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes. Next up, we're gonna have the Monday night game of the 5-3 Baltimore Ravens heading into New Orleans to take on the 3-5 New Orleans Saints. Sorry, that was my phone. But the 5-3 Ravens, we'll start with them on the road. We're not sure if Gus Edwards is going to suit up for this week. Obviously, we believe he will, but if not, Kenyon Drake will be back back at the helm of the backfield. Him and Justice Hill. I just think overall, I don't even want to spend too much time on this game. But Baltimore, they're coming off of an impressive win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, they had some flaws, but I mean, I'm going to say this, especially Rashad Bateman. Uh, the biggest thing for Baltimore coming into Monday night is that they had, one, a long rest the last time they played being Thursday night last week. They're playing Monday night now, so they've had a long time to rest Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. I believe Bateman's out for this week. I don't think that'll change much. I'm hoping more so that Mark Andrews is healthy, right? Because when Mark Andrews is healthy, this offense is more dangerous than ever. But they're taking on a 3-5 Saints team that probably no team in the NFL has struggled more with injuries than the Saints team. But they're coming off of a shutout win, I believe it was 24-0 against the Raiders. Alvin Kamara looked great, and Chris Olave had a pretty good game. They were also missing Marshawn Lattimore last week. He's expected to be back. It's tough to go against the Saints at home with Marshawn coming back, with possibly Michael Thomas coming back, and with how red hot Alvin Kamara is. But give me Baltimore. I hate to take the road team, but give me Baltimore. They're going to improve to 6-3, take a commanding lead on the AFC North, and that's going to do it for picks of the week, man. Somehow we're going to try and top the 11-4 record that we had last week. I believe that's like 73%, right? Correct percentage, rather. I'm hoping that just one time that we can top that again. I doubt it. But that's going to do it for picks of the week. Let's quickly get into the fantasy pickups of the week, which there's not many, but we're still going to get into it nonetheless. Okay, as you see, obviously you guys have the graphic in front of you. There's only 4 people I would say that are worth being picked up this week. Before we get into these 4 on the screen, if you do need a running back, if Kenyon Drake is out there with Gus Edwards possibly not playing this week, obviously you want to go grab a running back that is going to be the lead running back in the top 5 rushing offense, that being Kenyon Drake. And that is always going to be a good pickup option at the running back position. But first, we're going to start off with the both Jets players. I think they're going to be on both ends for you guys. Garrett Wilson and or Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin for Zach Wilson, who struggles at times with his accuracy and his decision making. He bails Zach Wilson out a lot, and you saw that on both touchdowns last week he had against New England. Tyler Conklin, he's going to be, I don't know, he's a sneaky play. He's a sneaky play this week, especially if you had a tight end like Pat Freiermuth, or if you had a George Kittle, or a David Njoku. Obviously, he went down with an injury, but those are some of the teams that are on bye this week. I would say Tyler Conklin would be a very good pickup for you this week, as the other tight end I have is also on a bye, but he's still a pickup nonetheless. So Tyler Conklin for the Jets, he's only rostered in 18% of leagues at the time I'm recording this, so he's readily available. Go out there, pick up Tyler Conklin, even if you just want to stash him. He's nonetheless, I think he is Zach Wilson's favorite target with Breece Hall going out. For Garrett Wilson on the left side of the screen, he's exactly, I think he's at 51% of being picked up in leagues, which he just misses the criteria that I like to use. I like to stay under 50%, but it's close enough, right? Garrett Wilson, obviously last week he exploded. He had 13 or so fantasy points. Garrett Wilson, he hogs up a lot of targets. He's a deep ball guy. And like I said, with Zach Wilson's gunslinging mentality at the quarterback position, Garrett Wilson's going to be a guy that you want to target if you're in desperate need. Obviously, like I said, if you had an Amari Cooper, or if you had a Deebo Samuel or a Brandon Ayuk in your lineups, or a Deontay Johnson, or any of the Pittsburgh receivers, any of the Denver receivers, like a Jerry Jeudy, Garrett Wilson is going to be a valuable pickup this week, and he's going to be a good start for you as well. I want to start with Rondale Moore first, and then we'll make our way to Mr. Greg. Rondale Moore, the Arizona receiver. He's rostered in exactly 50% of leagues. So both receivers barely meet the criteria. One actually passed it, but whatever. Rondale Moore last week. Robbie Anderson hasn't caught steam yet with this offense, right? He was out there last week, and he was out there 2 weeks ago. He hasn't caught steam with this offense yet. And if we don't see any production from Robbie Anderson this week, Rondale Moore's value only goes up. So Rondale Moore, he's the number 2 in this offense. Obviously, we still have to worry about Zach Ertz soaking up targets, but Rondale Moore being the second receiver in this offense, this team not as dominant as they've been in the past years, they're going to need to pass a lot throughout the remainder of the season. You can only expect, especially if Robbie Anderson continues to struggle, you can only expect D-Hop to get double covered each and every play with the team's best corner, right? So Rondale Moore, he's going to be facing the lesser corner each and every week. He's going to have less attention on him. He has speed. He's really an incredible athlete if you watch Rondale Moore play. He's already had 2 touchdowns this year, I will add. I watched both of these live, so they were painful. But as a Rondale owner in a couple leagues, Rondale has 2 touchdowns this year that were scraped off due to offensive holding penalties, or I believe the other one was an offensive holding. So he's had 2 touchdowns that were scrapped this year. But nonetheless, Rondale Moore is going to be the number 2 in this offense, and an offense that is going to need to pass a lot. And there's going to be volume that needs to go around. Rondale Moore, look to pick him up if you need a receiver for the remainder of the season. I would say even more so than Garrett Wilson, look to pick up Rondale Moore for the remainder of the year. The last guy I want to talk about is Greg Dulcich. He's on a bye week this week. Repeat, Greg Dulcich is on a bye week this week, but he's only rostered at 38% of leagues. He's the tight end for the Denver Broncos, which I know is a red flag automatically. But listen, Greg Dulcich, in the last couple of weeks that he's actually had the majority of playing time over Albert Ogbuegbina. I think I said that right. But regardless, he stepped in over Alberto, and he's had eight catches every time that he's played. So right there, that's 8 fantasy points if you're playing it in a standard PPR league. But Greg Dulcich, nonetheless, um, last week he had a touchdown scrapped. I believe he had like 8 catches for 80 yards, and he would have had a touchdown, but it was scrapped due to a penalty, obviously. But nonetheless, Greg Dulcich, I would say even more so than Tyler Conklin. Go pick up Greg Dulcich and stash him on your bench for future weeks. I can only imagine with the struggles that Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy have had throughout the season, that Greg Dulcich's volume only goes up. That's going to do it for pickups of the week. I know it was very quick, but there's just not a lot of pickups the further and further we get into the season. Regardless, these guys are still valuable pieces that you can use in trades, and it only takes 1 week for them to blow up, right? And then we can use them to flip them for trades or keep them on your bench for depth. Garrett Wilson, Rondale Moore are your receiver pickups of the week. Greg Dulcich, who's on a bye, and Tyler Conklin, those are your tight end pickups of the week. That's going to do it for pickups of the week. I can't talk right now, apparently. But that's going to do it. Let's get into the outro where we have a very, very important announcement. Alright, before we get out of here, like I said, I have a big announcement for next Tuesday's show. As you see on the screen, and under the little next episode thing, I want to do a fan-led episode. And so far in these podcasts, I believe we're 7 episodes in now, which thank you guys for all the support. It's been more than I thought we would have at this point. So, you guys have been amazing. Let's preface that. But so far in these podcasts, it's been strictly me talking. And I would love to change that. I would love to open up to the community more and get more people involved. So you guys have a couple options. You could either drop a comment in the comment section of this video. You could head over to the Instagram that I have that's posted on the screen right now and drop a comment on the post that I'm posting today. Or if you want to get crazy, you can send me a voice recorded question, preferably through, if you have my number, do it that way. Or if not, then do it through my Instagram. It's not a private account, so anybody can send me any message. You can send me a voice recorded question. Try and keep it short and sweet, but overall, any football, basketball, or fantasy football questions that you have, drop it in one of those places. And next episode, next Tuesday, usually we do basketball on Tuesdays, but I'm just going to open it to anything. We're just going to have a fan-led episode. Any questions from any of those 3 subjects, again, the NFL, NBA, or fantasy topics, drop them below, and we're going to bring them to the show next Tuesday, and I believe that's going to be a lot of fun. I believe it's a way for you guys to get interactive with the show, me to get to know you guys better, and it's gonna bring a different element to the show, right? But that's going to do it for today's show. Like I said, drop those questions. If we don't get enough, then I might just go ahead and do a regular Basketball Tuesday. But I'm really counting on you guys. I think you guys will come through, drop plenty of questions, and make next Tuesday's show the funnest yet. But until then, good luck this weekend with your fantasy teams. Good luck to your actual teams. And hopefully all of them win, obviously. Peace, love, and hugs to all of you guys. Yet again, thank you for all the support. Until next Tuesday, I'm out.